Hi, folks, and welcome back to another episode in the Formula Project. Series of videos about fixing stuff on my 1995 Pontiac Firebird Formula. What you're looking at here is a shock. I'm shocked! Actually, you're looking at me and a mechanic friend of mine dealing with replacing the shocks. And the first thing he's doing here is he's getting the bolts loose for the top shock mount on the driver's side. You see, he's going to do that. Now, this is something I've been talking about. Okay, you'll see a lot of videos on YouTube. People, I do this and do that. Here's the way I went. I actually engaged the services of an actual mechanic, 20-year GM ASC Master Certified mechanic, who is available on GetWrench.com. They're a mobile mechanic service that comes by, and this guy had some good creds and some great reviews. You see what he did right there, the first step of any shock replacement on a 4th gen Firebird. He unbolted the master cylinder. And we also found out that my master cylinder is leaking, so I guess I got to do that too. Anyway, this guy is really good, knows his stuff. You see he got the lower tie rod loose from the spindle. And what we're going through here is he's taking apart the driver's side, the front end. Now, am I going to show you every single nut and bolt? No. What I'm going to show you is the steps that are going to happen when you do this job. Now, if you want to find out how to take off a control arm or that kind of stuff, I mean, yeah, that's all there. That's common knowledge. What this video is really seeking to do is to show you what's involved in the job so you can figure out if you want to actually take this on yourself or have someone else do it. And there's some things that happen along the way in this job that you may not be prepared for. For one thing, by the time most Firebirds, most 4th gen F bodies in general need shocks, they also have a need for some other work. Now, this car right now has 173,000 miles on it. Now, I originally thought that the factory installed carbon front shocks were still on this, but they're not. In fact, the shocks that I have that I bought to replace them are actually the exact same shocks. So, and those are AGX KYB AGX 20s or 20s. What I'll do is at the end of the video I'll give a complete parts list of everything that I bought for this car. But the thing you have to remember is when you have a car, it's such an involved process to do something like shocks in this car that you might as well take care of things as they happen. So you look at things like your ball joints, you look at your control arm bushings, even kind of look at your brakes, stuff like that. You take the time because it's so much time and trouble to get this stuff apart that just kind of budget an extra couple $100 because chances are you're going to need to change something, especially with the car with as many miles on it as this one, with as many original things. Now, I plan to do the upper and lower ball joints on this when I was planning this job out because I figured if the shocks were bad, so were the ball joints. And it turns out it still had the factory top ball joint with 173,000 miles on it, and the lower. Pretty much everything was original. But what you see there is he's in the process of disassembling the driver's side, and he's trying to get the spindle loose right now. He's got an air impact. This guy is great. He had a Ford Flex, and the funniest thing is that this Ford Flex only had one seat in it, the driver's seat. Right next to him, he actually had bolted an air compressor, a full-size air compressor, like a 50-gallon air compressor, which was just funny to me. And the rest of it, he had no seats in it. It was bolted in toolboxes. I have to say, I recommend this guy's work. He does the Metro Phoenix. He does the East Valley area. So you're talking Scottsdale, Tempe, Mesa, that kind of thing. But GetWrench will assign qualified mechanics to come out and do the stuff. Now, yeah, could I have done this myself? Maybe, if I had about a week to spend screwing around. But remember, I drive this car. This is my commuter car right now, so it has to be running Monday morning. So in that case, you gotta, know thyself and, embrace your limitations. You just do it. Besides, the tools that I would have needed to buy, which is I needed a new spring compressor, I would have needed an air impact gun, all that, would have easily been at least as much money as just paying this guy to do it and do it right. Plus, he was a really friendly guy. His name's Brent, and he points stuff out, and he's straight up and honest. He's not going to make you do something you don't need to do. You see there, what he's basically doing is checking the front wheel bearing, but he's getting ready to pop the top ball joint loose, the spindle off the ball joint. So now, like I said, one thing about this job, and I get spoiler alert. We ended up, yes, replacing the top ball joint, which I plan to do anyway, but we also ended up doing the lower control arm because I have, and this is kind of a dig against Harbor Freight, I actually have a ball joint press, but it didn't fit on the lower control arm. And instead of fighting with it, we looked at it, and it turns out the rear control arm bushing was up. There it goes. It's free. Just a little bit of hammer, and bang, it popped right out. But it turns out the rear control arm bushing were shot. So it's like, okay, what's the point? Why are we going to go through an extra 2 hours later fighting with this thing for something that just, was $100 part? A lower control arm for this car is $100, guys. That's it. On top of that, we also redid the tie rod end links, the outers, because they were original too, and they were also the grease cup was blown out, and it was just a matter of, we're talking about safety here, and that's what I'm primarily worried about. It's the only reason I was worried about this car at all. Oh, and by the way, I didn't do a video, put it in the video, but if you check back my El Camino video and check in the shocks and how I collapsed them and they didn't come back, yeah, both front shocks on this were that way. I pushed them down and they didn't come back. So, yeah, the front shocks were toast on this car. Now, they weren't factory, so they didn't have 172,000, but they probably had at least 70,000 on them. So, see, he's moved. See how the brake master cylinders would move to the side there, because you can't. There's really no other way to get to the bolts. If this guy knew an easier way, he would have done it. There's a couple of things though that I'm going to have him back to do. Actually, I'm probably look for a video on the master cylinder to come up on this. I'll probably have him do that, mostly because, well, he's a GM certified tech, and this car has ABS, and he'll know how to bleed the brakes. So I'm not fighting the ABS system. That's the only reason I don't do it myself, is that I don't want to deal with the ABS system. So, okay, you see there, we've jumped ahead a little bit. Once he got that free, this is the old shock and spring. This is the old upper control arm. And you see that rusty part in the middle. Basically, you're seeing part of the upper shock mount. And what I put brand new upper shock mount, brand new lower shock mount. Right now he's checking the upper control arm. Let's see. This car has never been in snow, by the way. And you can see that even in that case, it's still a lot of rust. Water just gets stuck up there and never leaves. What else is in here? There's a new absorber, spring dampener, spring absorber, spring. I can't think of the word now. The vocabulary is escaping me. But pretty much the only thing that got reused that you see in this whole assembly was the spring. Everything else was replaced. And again, there'll be a parts list at the end of this video. But right now, he's using an external spring compressor. He's installing it to get it on and off, and he's being very careful to not what he properly called the jounce jounce cover. That cover, everybody talks about crushing. He's very careful to not crush it, since it's something that doesn't come with the new shocks, and something that kind of a pain in the butt if you mess it up. But yeah, and right now we're looking at the upper control arm, and look at that. I mean, it's not cancerous rust, but there's enough there that I can't imagine what a car on the East Coast would be like. Something with snow and salted roads. It must be 100 times worse. Interesting enough, the upper control arm bushings were actually in really good shape. So, and you can see he's installing the spring compressor here. And this guy is a pro mechanic. He's not some shade tree or some guy down the street. So this is how a pro does it, folks. And one thing I will say, too, about Get Wrench, specifically Brent here, is really friendly guy, knows his stuff, you know, just works fast, works professionally. Not afraid to answer a question. You know, I didn't bug him too much, though, because he wasn't there to try to make my video better. And that's another thing I'll say about these videos. I try to show you what's going on here, but this is a pro, and I'm not going to make him waste his time. And he's paid by the hour, so, or my money, in parentheses, just so I can make a how-to video with somebody who wasn't expecting it. All right, so what he's doing now, as you see, is he's actually mounting up the shock in a vise, in my table vise there, because what he's going to do is pull off the spring assembly. He'll get the top nut loose in that. Basically, put all that as basically just he's doing. The only reason he's doing this is to get the spring off. The rest of it is all going to be tossed. But you see, he's got it mounted in a vise, and this is the old shock, so he doesn't care about if he's crushing something, which is fine. But he's making sure it's all nice and firmed up. And you should do this. You should mount it. He was real happy that I had a vise like this sitting there because it made his life a lot easier. And hey, guess what? It'll make your life easier too. What he's doing now is he's compressing the spring compressor a little more. Try to help get that top off. I'm basically getting out of his way. What he's doing is, again, he's tightening up he's compressing the spring more so he can get the assembly disassembled. Well, you can see the boxers, the Ajax, KYB Ajax. Those are about $100 a piece, those front shocks. Not the most expensive. They're not QA ones or anything like that, but they're definitely a good shock. They have a knob on the side, setting 1 to 10. We set these for 6, which is a decent. It'll ride a little hard. It'll be a little stiffer, but it won't be like bone jarring. And that's what the old ones were set for. And when this car was, I remember when this car everything was newer and worn out, that was just about a perfect setting. You're getting a good view of the top of the shock now too, and what he's going to ratchet off there. You know, you see it, he's still adjusting it. So now he's using his air impact. He's getting that nut loose. Now he's marking the relative positions for reassembly for parts. Even though most of this stuff's getting thrown away, it's a good reference when he's rebuilding. He wants to make sure that when he puts the new shock in, that everything's right. See, the shock is actually pulling off the whole assembly. Once that nut's off, pretty much nothing holds it. Again, I'm sorry it's dark. My camera failed me. And I didn't want to get too close because I didn't want to get in his way. So, nothing worse than a customer who's in your way. There it goes. You saw he just pulled the whole thing off. And now he's taking the old shock off. And there it is. Alright, now he's got the new shock, and you can see he's protected the bottom. He's got it back in the vise. He's got the spring compressor on. He's got that jounce cover on. And you can see there's the new upper mount. There's a new insulator in there. So again, the only thing being reused is the spring. So the upper insulator actually comes with a little cup because some of the shocks the replacement shocks that come with the that you can buy don't have that cup integrated, like you see that little flaring there. They just have like little nubs, and you put the flaring on it. But I wanted the insulator because I didn't want that spring bouncing around in there, and I didn't want to use the old one. So again, it's not like I spent $1,000 on shocks, but I didn't go cheap either. Also, the A-arms, when I bought the A-arms, they were kind of, well, I didn't expect to do A-arms, but I thought I might have to, so I kind of planned for them. So he actually had me run over to Parts Authority, and I got the A-arms. Again, they were like 99 something a piece, and the end lengths, the tie rod end lengths, were about 25 a piece. They had another option for $12, but I'm not going to go cheap on tie rod end lengths or tie rod outers. You can see he's cinching down that bolt. There you go. And notice the orientation and where he's got those clamps, the spring compressors. Here he's doing some cleaning. Actually, it's not cleaning. This is the upper control arm. And he's trying to get the, well, he's going to. He's getting the upper ball joint out. He's grinding off the rivets that hold it on. You can grind them, or you can use an air hammer. He didn't have the air hammer with him today, so he just decided to grind them. But that's okay. That's most people are going to grind them. And I can tell you, they didn't want to let go. This thing was on there good. So don't think this is going to be a 5-minute thing. Of course, once he got the rivets ground down, just took a drift and was able to pop them out. And then pretty much the ball joint just fell right off. You'll see that in a minute here. It's funny, I mean, even pro mechanics, you know, a lot of times they have to do stuff just like us.
Yeah, it's, well, yeah. It'll be alright. you're making
I
progress.
hate rivets. See, that the upper control arm is actually in really good shape. He was commenting, and he's like, you can get these things sent out and powder coated, and I was like, boy, I really would have loved to, but I wasn't looking to have the car disassembled for a week while I waited for it, if that, maybe more. Not a bad idea, though, if you happen to be rebuilding one of these things and have it ripped apart. It would definitely be a good idea. I like powder coating.
A little mess. Don't worry about it.
All right, what he's doing now,
That'll be all right.
he's got a little die grinder there. He's cleaning out the rust and stuff and cleaning out stuff. I'm just making a nice clean surface, getting rid of some of that crap that's in there. See, that's the mark of a pro, somebody who actually cleans up stuff. You know, if he could have easily just slammed everything back together, left all the rust in it, but he didn't. And imagine how bad, I mean, if you're back east and you got a car with this many miles and you're doing this job, chances are what you see in his hand, that whole assembly, that upper control arm, you'd probably just throw in the trash anyway. You wouldn't even try because it would be so rusted up and screwed up. But that's one of the benefits of living in the desert. Although you don't entirely escape it. All right.
Yeah. If I had the time, I'd love to do all of that.
I was getting ready to install the new upper ball joint.
Actually,
The upper ball joints came from Advanced Auto. They were like
that was done. Everything just to make it easy.
they were like 25 a piece or 30 a
In
piece.
fact, they went
Yeah.
a step further and had
Lifetime warranty, of course.
the Rally 1 wheels
So.
on it. And they managed to match, and they powder coated the wheels and managed to get the right argent color powder coated onto
The upper brackets, by the way, I'll
Yeah,
just
that
mention
thing is
this.
coming
Like I said, there will be a
off.
parts list at the end of the
So-
video, but the upper brackets, the upper shock mount was a Moog part.
Which we had the masks and all that stuff for it, but
The isolator, the spring isolators were a Monroe part.
of course,
What
you're
else
moving
was
to
moved
Dubai,
on this?
Colorado at 9,000 feet, and it's like, okay, you got like a month and a half to drive.
Oh yeah, the insulator, the upper
They're
mount,
right
the
off
upper
a
insulator,
$1 million highway, so
that triangle
you know they can. They want to go the
rubber
twisties,
isolator.
You know, well, you probably know all about that. Bikers
Yeah,
love
right
that,
now
all
he's
the twisties. Some bikers
installing-
love it once.
The upper ball joint. And he's just using a battery-powered nut driver there. And then you'll see him come along in a minute here, and he'll actually put a small torque wrench on it just to make sure they're torqued to the right values. You watch this video, you'll see what he torques. It's you know what things need to be torqued. He also, and part of it didn't get on video, but when he did the lower control arms and that, he made sure those were torqued out right too. Well, you don't want your lower control arm falling off when you're going down the road now, do you? So, but there you go. See, there's his torque wrench there.
So you're actually torquing.
And the funny thing is,
so nobody ever
you know,
tells anybody.
mechanics know what works, and it's like, yeah, you can spend.
Oh, what the hell, man?
He had a few tools that he picked up at Harbor Freight because he knows it's not something he relied on. But you see, he's got better tools for stuff he needs to rely on and stuff he doesn't want to take a chance on. But you know,
Awesome sauce.
there you go. Pretty much ready to go. Okay, now this is where he's starting to actually try to work on. Sorry, the camera's bouncing, but he's actually starting to try to work on getting the lower ball joint off. And this was pretty much a pivotal point. This is where it was like, okay,
Yeah, I just worry about whenever I get slick in the front end. It's like
it became
it's
so
a nice
much
thing
trouble,
after, you know,
like I said,
over
that he's
150,000
just like,
miles. You might
okay,
wish things maybe made
why
more
bother?
noise,
But you
but
see a couple of good
when I
whacks
hear a
on
click
to
on
get the ball
turning
joint
the wheel,
loose, and that he's taken the sway bar end links loose so he can get them out of the way. He's also noticed being careful using a smaller hammer because he doesn't want to hit that. Right above it, you see, is the ABS wheel sensor, and he doesn't want to hit that. So a little bit of pry bar work. If he gets to hit, it should pop free. But this one was again original, so it didn't want to go. Now, guys, I don't recommend you do this with a part you want to reuse. Like I said, I had a brand new one ready to go. If you are so fortunate to have a decent press, ball joint press, that actually fits this car, and the problem with this car, why the press wouldn't fit, is because the press was made for a flat bottom day arm, and this one has an angle to it, so it wouldn't fit. And this was a Harbor Freight tool that we were trying to use, and it just wouldn't work. But this is good to see to get the spindle free. Now, if you're just doing the shock, if you're not worrying about all this stuff, you don't have to go to this extra step. But I included it because this is everything that happened. This is real life here. So see, he's hitting it on the flat, and eventually it's going to pop. There you go. See? And that's exactly where you're supposed to hit it. And now the spindle's off, and you can see there's the lower ball joint and the lower control arm. Another important thing is those little clips. Make sure those clips are right. Now we're coming in. This is you've pretty much just assembled the front suspension at this point. You can see there's the sway bar end link, there's the brake, and it's not hanging by the hose. He's got a bungee cord holding that thing up there. You can see there's all the parts. There's the new shock assembly ready to go. And what he's going to do, now that everything's out of the way, he's going to hang the shock from the top first. He won't torque it down, but he'll hang it from the top first. Just like you see there. And then he'll basically build the bottom up around it. Now guys, again, this is a pro mechanic. This is how the pros do it, so I don't care what the shade trees say. The pros do it this way. Now he's taking off the old tie rod outer. And yeah, this car needs to be aligned. In fact, on the driver's side, right now it's got excessive negative camber, so that it's the top of the tire is actually kind of tilted in about an inch. So I've got to get it aligned, and it does affect the ride. It's drivable, but I wouldn't want to drive it for very long that way.
Okay, so we got $12 ones. I don't know how good those are, and they got the $25.
Real good rule of thumb: you count the number of spins when it comes off, and try to put it back on the same way. But the problem is when you put on a new lower control arm and all that, the geometry is going to be changed. And when this thing was last aligned, it was aligned to whatever wear was in the suspension settings as it is. So this was never going to be right. So just plan on it. You change the lower control arm, you do all this work, you are going to need an alignment. And in my part of town, the alignment on this car, front end alignment, is about $60. So. right now what he's noticing is the way the new shock is, the mounting tabs on the bottom, the ears there, they have to be clocked, and right now they're not clocked to match up with the lower A-arm. So he actually had to get a couple of crescent wrenches and a pry bar because it's that tight, the bushing's that tight, to clock them so they would match up the mounting surface of the lower control arm. And the nice thing about the lower control arm is it comes with brand new bushings, a brand new brand new ball joint. Everything's brand new. So, that's a lot of work saved right there. I'll tell you, he got those both lower control arms on. This whole job was done, including, the surprise I pulled on him with the lower ball joint was turned into lower control arms. 4 hours, which was what was allotted for just the shocks. So he got this whole thing done and basically rebuilt 3/4 of my suspension in the time that it would usually take to do just the shocks. But that tells you what a pain in the butt the shocks are in this car. It's not trivial. It's very much like a McPherson strut. It's just as big a pain in the ass. But yeah, some other stuff we discovered. I'll be doing a video in the future, by the way. Yeah, the power steering line. So apparently I have a leak. I thought it was the oil. I thought it was the oil line dripping, but it's not. It's power steering fluid. So I'm probably going to do the pump and the lines real soon here. But again, it's an old car. It's not surprising. This stuff happens.
It's like 3/4 of the front.
Right now he's reassembling the spindle. Now he's got the lower control arm back on. You didn't see that part, but he torqued that thing back on. Getting it the upper connected, so it's pretty close to assembled here.
Of course. You have a nice mix of metric and standard on this car too.
So he's tightening the bolt on the upper ball joint. You see there's no specific torque. He knows by feel. Putting the cotter pin in.
Still amazes me that one little bolt.
And that is basically the entire front suspension of a 4th Gen F body right there. V6, V8 doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
You see him smiling. It's because we were laughing the whole time. I was joking around and stuff.
No, they wouldn't want
telling tall tales and such. But
at least not within the warranty period.
looks like, yeah, I think he's doing the
Yeah, I went up to one place.
cotter pin on the lower ball joint.
Shocks, and they're like, okay, it was about the same price. And the guy's like, he's expensive. It's like, you know what?
Now he's getting ready to hook up the tie rod in.
Name and this number of this other place. He's like, go over there. Well, it's not that he didn't want to do it. He's just like, I don't think he liked who he worked for. So yeah, he's like, I used to work there. They're cool. It's like, yeah, you know. In other words, you really don't want us to do this. Yeah. I just smiled and said, thank you, Jacob. Shot of all the tools it takes. Oh, Lord. Of course.
All right, there it is, all assembled. Now we're back on the driver's side.
I like it.
And this was the pain in the butt. See, he's got the. Well, he said it was actually the driver's side ended up actually being easier, partly because on the fourth gens, there's the exhaust kind of gets in the way of one of the nuts you're trying to get at when you're putting the upper control arm back together. The exhaust, because on that side, because it goes down, or on the lower control arm. Lower control arm. You're trying to get that back nut in. The exhaust is kind of right there. You don't have a lot of room to work.
Yeah, maybe that's possible because because it's got the Y pipe and then goes into the cat on that side. So yeah, it's probably a little more. And you said the other side would be easy. How come this side seemed to go on faster then?
Basically, a repeat of the procedure he did on the other side. Just on this side, you actually get to see him tighten up the nut on the lower ball joint and control arm to the spindle. Yes, the car is supported by two jack stands. You see the wheels are kind of tucked underneath just for safety. This guy's good. He had two more jobs to do, though. The next job he was going to was he was going to be working on a 78 Corvette. Had an overheating problem. Then he had a big truck, big Dodge truck he was going to go work on.
I had some. It's like I bought this car for my mom in 2013. Had about 20,000 miles on it since then, but it's all been. And it's like
He actually owns.
One of my friends like, well, you gotta let me drive it. It's like, no, not yet, because I don't trust this.
He actually owns a '95 Firebird himself. He also owns a 2010 Camaro, so he's a GM guy.
Makes me feel a little better. I don't like a car that's unpredictable. That's why I don't drive front wheel drives. I almost got killed in.
So I think part of the reason he actually took this job on, because this isn't in the regular listing of jobs that GetWrench puts out there. This was more of a custom job, but he took it. I think maybe part of it is because he knows the car, and he knows what he's looking at. So, which is good to have somebody who's familiar with what you're driving, has worked on them before. Somebody who's only ever worked on minivans isn't going to know what to do with this. There's going to be a lot of what the hell and how do you and why. He's like, no, way to do this and that and the other thing. It's pretty much a matter of just degrees of why the hell is this being a problem when I know it shouldn't, that kind of thing. But actually, he didn't really have that much trouble. And like I said, it would have cost me more in labor hours to make him try to get the lower ball joint out than to just go buy the parts and do it. And it made sense, and it was something I was thinking about anyway. And I feel a lot better about having new control arm bushings and new ball joints in this thing. This is probably the most, of anything, front suspension and steering is the number one safety issue and safety concern with a car, and it's not something you want to play around with. So I was very concerned about the safety of this vehicle with the condition the front end was in. So, and it's just age, guys. It's just age. At some point this was going to have to be done. I said, what the hell, do it now. And I'll tell you this, for the tie rod ends and the two control arms with tax out the door was like $260. So here you see he's taking off on this side. He's taking off the tie rod, the outer tie rod end. And the control arms and the tie rod ends, again, came from Parts Authority.
That's probably nice that somebody was fighting on that. Well, I don't want to buy any more new cars. I already bought all the parts.
And this is the side that's the most out, and that's probably because this is the side that had the screwed up rear bushing on the lower control arm, which the last time it was aligned for that. Now that it's right, it's basically thrown off all the geometry. So, but we'll get that fixed.
Oh no, I'm not. It's not like I think it's. I was kind of.
Again, anytime if you're taking a tie rod end loose, you're taking spindles apart, you got to take it back and get it aligned because the geometry just gets screwed. There's no getting around it. He got it back just enough to where the car is drivable, and pretty much Monday morning, this thing is scheduled to go to a alignment shop. Got one by my work. Hopefully they can get it done.
You should just invent some anti-grav thing so they hang in the air. Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Just sit there, just have a. Don't you worry about finding it anymore.
Got the castle nut on there.
That'd be cool. Like 3/4 inch crescent. Come. Yeah.
Nice putting the car in. And that's about it. There you go. That's wrench. GetWrench.com. It was Brent. Brent was awesome. Brent, I thank you. And thanks for letting me video you and, watch this whole procedure. I was very happy with his work. And this was a little more involved than the average, shock replacement. And I made the call at the time. It's like, yeah, this makes sense. Something needed to be done, and so I did lower control arms. You may or may not have to do that. The one thing is you probably will. It is easier to pop the spindle off the top ball joint and let that go free to give you some room to get the shock out, the whole assembly out. Other than that, that's it's a lot less involved if you don't do the lower control arm, but actually it's easier if you just do. If you've got a car, if you've got high mileage on it, and there's been no attention given to your shocks or the front suspension, you might as well just go ahead and plan, put in another $200 at least, plan on top of what are you paid for shocks and someone to come out and do it. I'll tell you what the labor was, a ballpark. Now I got a discount, but the base labor was about $500 to do the shocks. And pretty much around that for him to do the rest of it because it fell within the same time frame. It didn't matter what he did. It was just the hours. And he did this whole job, the shocks, the lower control arms, the tie rod ends, in about 4 hours. So we basically took a Saturday morning and did it. And I am thankful that he came out, and I will be using him again. You'll probably see him in a couple of more videos. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching. I know it wasn't a step-by-step, bolt-by-bolt turn video, but hopefully you see what's involved. You see some of the pitfalls, some of the stuff that I went through. If you're in the same condition, this is what you're looking at. Total out the door, I'll tell you this much. All the shocks and associated parts that I bought, which included the upper mounts and the insulators and the lower mount, and the lower insulator, and the A-arms and the tie rod ends and the ball joints, and then counting the labor. Put the labor in for all that, and we're talking about $1,000 total to do all this you saw on the front end. About $1,000, including labor, parts and labor. That's what it cost me. Some parts came from Summit Automotive. Others came from Amazon. I used good quality parts. I didn't go cheap. If you want to go cheap, that's your choice, but you get what you pay for. I always believe that. Everything on that has a lifetime, if not better, a lifetime or good warranty, as good a warranty as you're going to get. Use quality parts. Again, you get what you pay for. Anyway, that's it for this video. I thank you so much, again, for watching. and I hope it was helpful. And until next time, El Camino Guy is out.